As Anthony Bourdain said, travel changes you. As you move through this life and this world, you change things slightly, you leave marks behind, however small, and in return, life and travel leaves marks on you. This is how we felt when we stepped into Budapest's history, as it is a different kind of emotion to experience the traces left by events in the exact same place where they occurred. We know that this part of history has been portrayed often through movies and books, but we believe it's still not enough for all of us to remember that history cannot be repeated this way ever again. We started our journey with a stop at the Dohány Street Synagogue and the complex that surrounds this place. But first, let's dive a bit into the city history. Budapest was formed by the merger of three cities, Buda, Pest and Óbuda. The most populous of this was Pest. The city opened its doors to Jews in 1783, who came here for the trading opportunities. After 1850, the Jews of Pest used the capital from trade to participate in the modernization of Hungary. This was made possible by the fact that the Jews had more entrepreneurial spirit, mobility, language skills, international contacts, and sought to make a living in the commercial and industrial careers despised by the Hungarian middle class. After 1919, Jewish society was subjected to increasing anti-Semitism, thus the survival of the Jewish community was highly threatened. During World War II, the German Nazis and their Hungarian accomplices murdered close to 500,000 Hungarian Jews. Every 10th victim of the Holocaust and every 3rd victim of the Auschwitz death camp were Hungarians. The events culminated in 1944 when after 16th of April the entirety of rural Jewry, around 435,000 people, was forced into ghettos. Most of them perished in Auschwitz-Birkenau and other extermination camps. Upon arrival at Auschwitz, the deportees were forced to write a postcard that indicated Waldsee as the place of dispatch. In reality, this was a cover name for Auschwitz. The purpose was to dispel suspicion amongst those still in Hungary and prevent panic. While the rural community had this brutal fate, the ones living in Budapest were living a different kind of horror. After March 1944, when Hungary was occupied by Germans, more than 100 resolutions were passed, each one of them depriving Jewish citizens of essential life opportunities and often sentenced them to death. Initially, the Jews of Budapest were moved to so-called protected houses close to the banks of Danube. From these houses, they were moved to the ghetto. This gets us to another chapter of the Holocaust in Hungary. On 19 October 1944, several groups of Jews from Budapest were escorted by the Arrow Cross Party to the banks of Danube for mass execution, only to be stopped by a German officer who had arrived by accident. Nevertheless, from mid-November, so-called floatings, murdering Jews by shooting them into the river, became increasingly frequent. The end of the Holocaust brings us to the Budapest ghetto that was created on 29 November 1944, and it was placed right here where we can see now the Garden of Remembrance. The approximately 1,000 square meters garden next to Dohány Street Synagogue is a symbolic place in the history of Hungarian Jewry. The development of the plot started after First World War, when the Hero Synagogue, intended as a memorial to Jewish soldiers, the culture center and the park were built. At the end of Second World War, in these buildings and garden, tens of thousands of people, residents of Budapest, were crowded together in inhuman conditions. When the ghetto was liberated, the bodies of thousands of Jews who had frozen or starved to death or died as a result of the siege and brutality of the Arrow Cross were found in the streets. More than 2,000 of these were buried in the garden. The park, with the pool, became a graveyard, a memorial to an era when all human feeling was lost. In the same area we can notice the Hero Synagogue that was designed by Laszlo Vago and Ferenc Farago and inaugurated in 1931. The building is a memorial to Jewish soldiers who had fallen in the First World War. The clean lines and modern style of the building demonstrate the well-thought-out functional planning of Jewish places of worship at the time. With its slightly eastern influence, the synagogue and the park next to it are surrounded by a row of arcades symbolizing the openness of Jewish communal spaces. In the same complex, we also visited a museum about the daily life of Jewish people. Its current building was built in 1931 by the Jewish community. In this exhibition, more than 300 items walk you through the days of Jewish life, including holidays, customs, and values. Here, time and space overlap, representing the eternal circle of Jewish life in the face of destruction, persecution, expulsion, and gas chambers. As Amos Oz and his daughter Fania Oz Salzberger said, "No one wrote after Auschwitz anything akin to 'there is nothing new under the sun.' Somehow, the circularity of repetitiveness of history was no longer an option." Last but not least, we enter the Doheny Street Synagogue, the building that dominates this place and has stood tall, through good and bad, for the Jewish community. The laying of the foundation stone took place on 5th September 1854. The masonry work was contracted to Joseph Hild with Ignaz Wechselmann, a permanent deputy of the architect Forster, who was on site. Financial disputes caused a change in the projecting team. Finally, Frigyes Fesle took over in 1858. He designed the decorative grille of the podium in front of the choir stalls, the two huge chandeliers with 12 lamps, the choir reading table that could be converted into a pulpit, the two ornate choir stalls, and the two candlesticks. Another new feature of the church was its 38 register, 2 manual organ. The result was a synagogue that boasted extraordinary and very slender architecture. It's the largest synagogue in Europe, the second largest one in the world, after the one in New York. The interior is 1,200 square meters, its towers are 44 meters high, and the flat-ceilinged interior seats nearly 3,000 people, with 1,497 men on the ground floor and 1,572 women in the upstairs stalls. The events that happened here marked forever the Jewish community, and survivors still grieve the loss of their close ones. As time goes by, there are less and less people to tell this story as they saw it live in front of their eyes. There are, however, places like this that try to bring into the attention of its visitors this part of history to emphasize once more that never again should this occur. In a society where dangerous ambitions, pride, and the sense of being better than others are still at play, we hope we learn something from the mistakes made.